15 years ago, I started creating music on a computer. It made the entire process of crafting music much easier, from being able to make it much faster to the amount of detail that you can forge into each track. Today we're going to explore what kind of computer you need to make music. That's coming up.
All for the dough. All for the dough.
Hey guys, my name is CNI and welcome to Wrap Ups. This channel is dedicated to helping motivated, independent hip-hop artists make the best music possible so they can share it with the world and make a big enough impact to create a fan base to not only support you financially, but throughout your creative process as well. But first things first, you gotta have something to create and store all of this music masterpieces on: a computer. But which one? A desktop, a laptop, a tablet? How much do you spend? $500, $1,000, more than that? Let's dig in and figure this one out. Let's talk about the vital components that figure into what type of computer that you're gonna need. First, your main hard drive. You have quite a few options here, but I personally recommend a solid state drive. A hard disk drive is less expensive, and if you're just starting out with a modest budget, this is still a great way to go. It just won't have the speed of a SSD. Which in my current setup, I'm using a 1 terabyte Fusion or solid state drive. I would recommend at least 1 terabyte of whichever you can afford. This gives you enough room for your digital audio workstation, your music and video editing software, and most other programs and plugins that you would need to have once you start up. The second most important is your GPU or your graphics card. Again, my recommendation here would be about 16 gigabytes of RAM. You might be able to get away with about 8 gigabytes, but I wouldn't go much lower than that. You can run into some pretty serious lag issues, overloading and crashing and things like that. No bueno. The third aspect of buying a computer is your processor. You really want to go at least an Intel i5 with a dual core, but I really recommend a quad core or higher. This again here has to do with the speed of your overall computer processes and the functionality for whatever program that you're using. The fourth thing to consider are your computer options. There are certainly many other aspects to consider, like the monitor, the mouse, the keyboard, the amount and type of ports like USB, Firewire, Thunderbolt, SD reader for video editing, and a whole host of other options and upgrades, but this is totally up to you as a user. Number 5 is very, very important: backups. One thing I will tell you from personal experience is backing up all of your work and having the ability to back up your backup, or a redundancy backup. I can't tell you how many files or how much music I've lost over the years because of failing hard drives, which eventually they all do fail. It's not an if, but a when. Now let's talk about laptop versus desktop versus tablet. Which one's right for you? Are you looking to make music on the go or in the confines of your own home? Also, in later episodes, we'll be covering sound cards and monitoring. Both are essential in your setup, but mostly not portable. But this is personal and up to what you desire the most. I've used a desktop and a laptop. I've used a MacBook Pro, and now I'm using an iMac. I've never used a tablet, so I can't recommend it, but if it has all the ports and specs I've talked about in this video, it may be okay. I'm not sure with what the iPad Pro or the new Surface Pro has to offer or how it will perform, but it brings me to my next point, which is Mac versus Windows. Again, I've used both for years. I started with Windows and then I switched to Mac later on. They both work great. Again, this is just totally up to your preference. Macs do tend to be more expensive, but I actually have grown to prefer the operating system. It's just what I like. One thing I will tell you is you should try to have a computer for going on the internet to avoid viruses. A separate one, of course. This can really inhibit your computer speed and your ability to create the way that you want. Also, what digital audio workstations you use. Most are cross-platform, but there are some that are only for Windows, like FL Studio, even though they are hoping to come out with a version for Mac pretty soon. And for Mac, you have GarageBand and Logic, which are only available for the OS. So that is something else that you have to take into consideration if you want to use any of those digital audio workstations. What you're using it for is a huge factor when it comes to the computer that you buy. Are you just producing? Are you going to be recording vocals, editing video, or all three? You're going to want to get something that is reasonably quiet because you don't want a computer that has loud fans turning on every 2 minutes. Something else to consider when buying is pre-made versus building your own. Building your own computer is really for the expert or the experienced. There are a lot of components to select, and they all have to coincide with whatever outboard gear you might be using. This is something I do have planned for a much later episode, but for now, I recommend buying one that's already made. It just makes life a whole lot easier. I personally use an iMac 1TB Fusion drive, 16 gigabytes of RAM, i7 quad-core processor, and I'm pretty happy with the setup right now. I was using an older, late 2011 model MacBook Pro, but once the logic board crashed twice, I decided it just wasn't stable enough to continue using for my music and video productions. As long as you keep in mind the specs I've shared with you, there are a lot of computers for you to choose from. If you don't want to go with the Mac, you can go with the Razer, which is what Metro Boomin uses. Also, the Acer Aspire is a good desktop. So you will have some research to do here to make sure you're purchasing something that best suits your needs. But I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Share your own personal experiences and your own setups. Maybe you can help out some other people. And I'll help out with as much as the questions as you guys have. And if this is your first time here at Wrap Ups, I'd love to have you guys subscribe and tune in every Saturday for a brand new episode right here at Wrap Ups. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next time.